A couple of years ago, prompt engineering was really popular. That is, improving the prompt to make the language model's output better, more ideal, and more accurate. On June 25th this year, Shopify's CEO made a post on X saying he thinks it should actually be called context engineering. Later, a big name in the AI world, Andrej Karpathy, also agreed that it should be called context engineering. By the way, Andrej is one of the founders of OpenAI. He also previously worked at Tesla, developing self-driving technology. In this video, I'll explain the difference between prompt engineering and context engineering. To make it easier for everyone to understand, I'll start with a demonstration. Right now, I'm going to use ChatGPT 5 in Poe. After opening it, I ask, what time is it now? And here's what it says. It says today is August 21st, which is correct, but the time it gives is a bit strange. It says it's 12:53, but right now it's actually 2:50. Even if the time zone is different, there shouldn't be a 3-minute difference. So now I ask it again, what time is it in Singapore? You'll see that it uses the previous incorrect answer to calculate the time in Singapore, and the result is wrong. It says it's 8:53 now, but in reality, it's actually 2:50 in the afternoon right now. So what did I do? I restarted the conversation and tried again. I clicked reset and then asked it once more. What time is it now? This time, it only gave me the date and said that it actually can't access the local time. So I asked again, what time is it in Singapore now? It emphasized again that it can't see the actual time. Next, I tried asking the same question to DeepSeek. I asked it, what time is it now? Similarly, DeepSeek replied that it couldn't access the current time. Then, with the same question, I asked ChatGPT. Again, I asked it what time it was, and you can see that it responded very accurately with the correct answer. August 21st, 2:53 p.m., and it was Singapore time. Through this example, you can see that sometimes whether the model can answer your question isn't actually a matter of the model's capabilities, nor is it about prompt engineering. The issue is actually with its context. That is, it doesn't have enough background information. In fact, when we use AI tools, we need to distinguish whether the question can be answered by the model itself, or if the model needs to rely on additional tools or extra information to answer it. We have to make that judgment ourselves. When it needs to use extra tools or information to respond to your question, those pieces of information and tools are considered as such. Those are part of the context. In other words, they're background information. In the earlier example with Poe and DeepSeek, there's a high chance that DeepSeek didn't provide the current date to the model at all. So the model doesn't know what today's date is. That's because the nature of a language model is simply to predict the next word. On the Poe side, it seems like it did provide the date, but not the time. So when I asked it what time it was, it kept responding with the date several times, and the time it gave was actually wrong. So, in Poe's case, the context it has only includes the date, not the time. Now, looking at ChatGPT, it's obvious that it has both the date and the time, and it also has memory. The biggest difference between ChatGPT and other tools is that the longer you talk to it, the more it knows about your background because it has a memory storage function. It knows I live in Singapore. It knows I have companies in both Singapore and Hong Kong. So when I ask it what time it is, it can use its memory to find my background information. As a result, it directly responded to me with the time in Singapore. This is what we call context engineering. To use an analogy, prompt engineering is like teaching your subordinates how to respond better. Context engineering, on the other hand, is like preparing all the necessary tools and information for a new colleague before they start work, so that it helps this new hire complete their tasks more easily and effectively. A couple of years ago, we used to call this type of AI Gen AI, meaning that you give it a prompt and it generates an answer for you. But as humans, we're not satisfied with an AI that just answers your questions. We actually want the AI to help you get things done. So starting from 2025, we've entered an era called Agentic AI, which means AI agents. Agents that work on your behalf. So it's not just AI anymore, it's AI agents. When you give them a prompt, they don't just generate an answer. They actually take action to help you accomplish tasks. For example, you can give them receipts and they'll do your bookkeeping, or if you work in HR, you can give them a stack of CVs and ask them to screen the resumes and so on. So context engineering is relatively more applicable at the level of AI agents. That means if one day you plan to build an AI agent for your company, just using prompt engineering won't be enough. You'll need to use context engineering as well. Take a look at this diagram and you'll understand the difference between the two even better. First, let's talk about prompt engineering. There are a lot of different little tricks involved. For example, the most commonly mentioned and perhaps the most cliched one is called role assignment. That means, for instance, if you tell it you are a US marketing expert and assign it a role, its output will be much closer to that of an expert. Actually, this kind of prompt engineering was even more applicable to models from a year or two ago, because those models were a bit dumber. As models get smarter, the importance of prompt engineering will gradually decrease. Another technique is called few shot, which means giving it more examples so you can guide its output to be closer to the result you want. There's also chain of thought, which has now evolved into reasoning models. Even if you don't know how to train a chain of thought, GPT-5 nowadays can already decide by itself when to use chain of thought. There are also some constraints. For example, if you're designing an AI customer service agent, you need to tell it not to answer questions that aren't related to the product and so on. These are all prompt engineering techniques, all centered around how to get better output from language models. Now let's talk about context engineering. When we use the LLM API, at the API level, there are actually two prompts. One is the system prompt, and the other is the user prompt. The user prompt is the input from the user. For example, if you're designing an AI customer service agent, the user prompt might be, "Hey, I received an item and it's broken." That's the user's question. The system prompt, on the other hand, would be something like, "You are a customer service representative for ABC Company. ABC Company is an online store that sells leather shoes. If a customer asks about the price, you need to enter the system," and so on. The system prompt is like the instructions you give to the customer service agent. You're telling them how to do their job. So you might ask, aren't these two things just prompt engineering? That's right, these two things are actually prompt engineering. So actually, prompt engineering is a part of context engineering. Besides that, what else is there? There are also tools. For example, if you run an online store, the AI might have tools like connecting to the SF Express API, so it can track where the customer's package has been delivered. Or for example, if it's an internal AI used by your accounting colleagues, you can give it some receipts, and it will automatically help you with bookkeeping. The tools it might need could be your company's Excel, or some cloud-based accounting software like Xero or QuickBooks, and so on. All of these are considered tools. Then there are also things like long-term memory and short-term memory. So, what about long-term memory? That's basically RAG. If your company has a lot of documents, you can use a method called embedding to store those documents in something called a vector database. For this video, I won't go into detail about this part. You can check out my previous videos for that. Simply put, when an AI needs to reference company documents to answer questions, we need to process those documents in a special way and store them in a database specifically for AI to use as its reference. For long-term memory, when it needs to look up information, it goes into its long-term memory to find it. Then there's short-term memory, like conversation history. These memories are usually stored in temporary memory. So if the user comes back the next day to ask questions, the short-term memory will have been forgotten. And when we develop an AI agent, we use prompt engineering techniques to put information into the system prompt. Actually, if you look at those 5 things on the right, ChatGPT actually has all of them. First, talking about user prompt and system prompt, when you enter a question in the chat box, that's the user prompt. And if you click on settings in the bottom left corner, you'll see an option called personality. Here you can set something called custom instructions, which can also be considered part of the system prompt. Actually, OpenAI also has a system prompt running in the background. For example, if you ask politically incorrect questions, it won't answer you, or if someone asks about committing crimes, it won't respond. These are all part of the system prompt. Next, let's look at the tools available in ChatGPT. What you see on the screen now are the tools that ChatGPT has, including web search, which means it can look up information online. It can also run code. For example, it can do calculations, because the strength of language models is language, but their weakness is calculations. There's also a tool called Canvas, which allows you to build simple applications. In a previous video, I answered a common question. Why does GPT-5 seem to perform worse when used in Poe? The main reason is that it lacks these two tools. Now, let me go back to the conversation I just had in Poe. Earlier, I asked it what time it is in Singapore. Now I asked it to go online and find out the current time in Singapore, and it replied to me saying, I don't have the ability to search the internet. That's because Poe doesn't provide this tool to it. So sometimes it's not that the model itself has a problem, nor is it an issue with prompt engineering, but rather that the model simply doesn't have the right tools to solve the problem. Next, let's talk about long-term memory and short-term memory. Actually, when you're using Poe like this, When you chat with it, that's considered short-term memory. If you just click the broom icon labeled clear context in the bottom left corner, you'll erase its short-term memory. So now I'm going to click clear. Now I'll ask it, what question did I just ask you? I ask it again, what question did I just ask? Here, you'll see that after clearing, it no longer remembers the previous conversation. This is what's called short-term memory. So does Poe have long-term memory? No, it doesn't have long-term memory functionality. Now let's look at the 7 GB side. Here, I tell it, help me remember that I just got a dog, it's a golden retriever, and its name is Bobo. Then I click send. Here, you'll see it says update saved memory. It has turned the fact that I got a dog into a long-term memory. Now I click manage to go to this long-term memory. You'll notice that it automatically records a lot of background information about me. This part is what makes Church different from other tools. The more you talk to it, the more it understands your background. It even knows that my wife's name is Jenny. If there are things you don't want it to know, you can click delete. By now, you should have a clearer understanding of what context engineering is. In fact, prompt engineering is just one part of context engineering. Context engineering has a broader scope and is mainly applied at the AI agent level. Besides giving it instructions, we also need to provide it with tools as well as long-term and short-term memory so that it can effectively help you work. Because starting from 2025, we are already entering the era of AI agents. It's not just about having AI answer questions. That's too simple. What we really want is for it to help us handle our work. In September, we will have 2 courses suitable for 2 types of people. The first type is those who want to use AI to improve their work efficiency. The second type is company management who want to help their company build an AI agent to boost their colleagues' productivity. After attending this course, you'll have enough knowledge, you'll understand the terminology, and you'll know what technologies and tools are available for AI agents. What can it do and what can it do? You'll have enough capability to communicate with an IT company and to develop your own AI solution. The first course, AI Upgrade and Transformation Workshop, is suitable for everyone. This is an introductory course where you'll learn about tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, and other daily office applications. The second workshop is called M by N, Practical Application, Process Automation, and AI Agent. If you want to know more details about the courses, feel free to click the link below the video. See you in the next video.